Hey friends! Today we're going to explore the history and folklore behind one of my favorite ballads. It's a seemingly simple song, but as we delve into its past, we'll learn a lot about the changing ways that humans have understood their relationship with animals and what it means to be wild or civilized. I know this song by the name Bangum and the Wild Boar, but it has different names and different traditions. The song's history winds its way through Welsh folk tales, French romances, and even ancient Irish cosmology. But the basic idea is always the same. It's about the hunt for a deadly boar who has a taste for human flesh. Here's the song as I learned it from Michael and Carrie Kline in West Virginia. If you want to learn to sing this song yourself, watch my companion video to this episode. But in the meantime, take a listen and then we'll explore the history. There's a wild hog in these woods, dill-o-dee, dill-o-dee. There's a wild hog in these woods, dill-o-dee. There's a wild hog in these woods, he'll eat your meat, he'll suck your blood. Come away, quaddle down, Quanzio. Bangum had him a wooden gun, dill-o-dee, dill-o-dee. Bangum had him a wooden gun, dill-o-dee. Bangum had him a wooden gun to shoot the wild boar as he run. Come away, quaddle down, Quanzio. And Bangum had him a butcher knife, dill-o-dee, dill-o-dee. And Bangum had him a butcher knife, dill-o-dee. Bangum had him a butcher knife, he swore he'd take that wild boar's life. Come away, quaddle down, Quanzio. He tracked that wild boar to his den, dill-o-dee, dill-o-dee. He tracked that wild boar to his den, dill-o-dee. He tracked the wild boar to his den. He spied the bones of 1,000 men. Come away, quaddle down, Quanzio. He raised his horn up to his mouth, dill-o-dee, dill-o-dee. He raised his horn up to his mouth, dill-o-dee. He raised his horn up to his mouth. He blew it east, west, north, and south. Come away, quaddle down, Quanzio. That wild boar came with such a dash, dill-o-dee, dill-o-dee. That wild boar came with such a dash, dill-o-dee. That wild boar came with such a dash, he split the hickory, oak, the ash. Come away, quaddle down, Quanzio. Then Bangum raised his wooden gun, dill-o-dee, dill-o-dee. Then Bangum raised his wooden gun, dill-o-dee. Then Bangum raised his wooden gun. He shot the wild boar as he run. Come away, quaddle down, Quanzio. Then Bangum raised his butcher knife, dill-o-dee, dill-o-dee. Then Bangum raised his butcher knife, dill-o-dee. Then Bangum raised his butcher knife. Right there he took that wild boar's life. Come away, quaddle down, Quanzio. There's a wild hog in these woods, dill-o-dee, dill-o-dee. There's a wild hog in these woods, dill-o-dee. There's a wild hog in these woods. He'll eat your meat, he'll suck your blood. Come away, quaddle down, Quanzio. Welcome back. So in this song, we have our hero, Bangum, who is hunting down and killing a terrifying wild hog who has killed 1,000 men. It's a simple story. A heroic human takes down a wild, dangerous animal. But the backstory is a bit more complicated. From India to Iceland, boars have long played important roles in mythology. In ancient Europe, boars were often worshipped as powerful, life-giving figures, capable of regeneration. Here's a neat example. The Irish sea deity, Manannán, was said to possess magical boars who were killed to feed the gods each night. Then the next morning, those same boars would be reborn, only to be slaughtered for that night's dinner. I think it's neat that those boars were immortal, but that is not a reincarnation cycle I would be stoked about. But by the early Middle Ages, boars were starting to get a bad rap. They were still used on shields and coats of arms to symbolize ferocity and strength, but they were also taking on more and more negative associations. Medieval bestiaries said that boars had no fear of death, and if injured, a boar would ferociously attack hunters and tear them apart with its tusks. Boars also became associated with the Antichrist, or the Apocalypse, due to biblical imagery in the Psalms of David, where a boar ravages the Lord's vineyard. And that is the same moment when the earliest evidence of the Bangum and the Wild Boar story emerges, in the 1100s with the Welsh prose tale Cilwch and Olwen. Cilwch and Olwen might be the earliest known Arthurian legend. In this story, the hero, Cilwch, is hunting an enchanted boar, Toch Toeth, because he wants to win the hand of Olwen, the daughter of the giant Ysbyddaden. Ysbyddaden, who doesn't like the idea of Cilwch marrying his daughter, tells Cilwch that the marriage can only take place if Cilwch completes 39 impossible tasks. One of those tasks is to retrieve the comb, razor, and shears that sit between the ears of the boar Toch Toeth. And Toch Toeth isn't your average giant boar. He was once a king, but God turned him into a boar as punishment for his sins. Toch Toeth's bristles are poisonous, and he has 7 deadly piglets as companions. On a side note, 7 Deadly Piglets would be a great name for a metal band. Cilwch knows he can't complete this quest by himself, so he asks his cousin, King Arthur, to help him hunt down Toch Toeth and the piglets. After extensive battles with Toch Toeth, first in Ireland and later in Cornwall, the piglets are killed, the treasures are taken from between Toch Toeth's ears, and Toch Toeth is driven into the sea. Cilwch eventually uses the tools retrieved from between Toch Toeth's ears to kill the giant Ysbyddaden, and in the end, he finally marries the giant's daughter, Olwen. The essential elements of this story were repeated in later romances, prose and verse narratives that were popular amongst the elite in the Middle Ages. One of these romances is called Sir Iglamort of Artois from 14th century France. This story features a knight, Sir Iglamort, who is hunting an enormous boar who is killing Christian men. Like Cilwch, Sir Iglamort is in love with the daughter of a lord, and that lord has tried to waylay their relationship by making Iglamort complete several impossible tasks. Iglamort locates the boar by following the bodies of dead men strewn across the ground, which might be the origin of the line in our song, "He spied the bones of 1,000 men." At some point, the themes of the Sir Iglamort romance started showing up in ballads, songs in verse that told stories based on older romances and folk tales. Various English and Scottish versions of the ballad Sir Lionel feature a knight who comes across a woman who is hiding in the woods from a giant boar. In order to save the lady, the knight kills the boar. Unfortunately, the boar turns out to be the pet of a giant who is not very happy that his boar has been killed. Sir Lionel fights the giant and defeats him. In later versions of the ballad, the giant disappears and is replaced by a witch or a wild woman who controls the boar as her familiar and who also gets killed by our hero. Most versions of this ballad collected in the United States don't mention the witch, or a giant, or even the lady. Often, like the version you heard me sing, all we have left is a battle between a man and a giant boar. And I think there's a reason why. At its core, this story is about humans' primal fear of the wild. The image of a wild hog in the woods who eats our meat and sucks our blood might not trigger that same clench in the stomach as it did for listeners several hundred years ago. But still, the idea of facing an angry predator is exhilarating and terrifying. Think about the movie Jaws, or the nightmare that every kid has about that monster in the closet. One time years ago, I made a major mistake. Right before bed, I listened to what I thought was a recording of grizzly man Timothy Treadwell being attacked and killed by a grizzly bear. Treadwell, for context, was made famous by Werner Herzog's documentary film Grizzly Man. Then I tried to go to sleep, but my body wouldn't let me. More specifically, my gut wouldn't let me. Every time I started to drift off, my stomach would jolt me awake, making me sit up in bed. It didn't matter that I was in a bedroom in the middle of Nashville, Tennessee. Millions of years of self-preservation instincts were kicking in. The bear was there, in the room with me, and it was not safe to go to sleep. It didn't matter that the recording turned out to be a fake. The recording gave me access to fears deeply embedded in my physiology. And ballads like Bangum do something similar. But of course, the message of the Bangum ballad is that wild, dangerous nature can be tamed. The witch, the giant, the boar, they're all frightening, but Sir Lionel, Kilwoch, and Sir Iglamor, they always win. Humanity always triumphs over the chaos and evil of nature. In versions of the ballad where the boar is controlled by a witch, that wildness is represented as feminine. Women like the ones our heroes are fighting to save, who need the help of men, are portrayed as good. But powerful women allied with the wild must be destroyed. I love this ballad, but I don't buy the message. About the wild feminine being evil, obviously, but also the idea that man can conquer nature. To me, the real fantasy of this song is the idea that humanity can defeat the wild. Despite our best efforts, we will always return to the wild, even if it's simply in death. We might escape being prey during our lifetimes, but the wild, the very earth, will eat us eventually. The wild hog is still out there, in the woods, waiting for us. And in the end, he always wins. There's a wild hog in these woods, diddle-o-dee, diddle-o-dee. There's a wild hog in these woods, diddle-o-dee. There's a wild hog in these woods. He'll eat your meat, he'll suck your blood. Come away, quaddle down, Quanzio. Eating the human flesh. That boar's gonna eat your flesh. Okay.